The night was glowing with the pale blue light of the colony's artificial sky. Dust storms from the red planet's desert brushed softly against the metal domes that kept everyone alive. Inside one of those domes was a place known as the Rusted Star Bar, a small corner where mechanics, traders, and mercenaries gathered after long hours of repairing machines that kept the colony breathing. The smell of oil, smoke, and cheap drinks filled the air. Music hummed low, and no one expected anything unusual that night. But everything changed when the bar door hissed open. A shadow stood at the doorway. The light flickered behind her, revealing a tall figure in a black cloak. The woman stepped inside slowly, her boots making heavy sounds on the metallic floor. Everyone turned to look. Her hair shimmered faintly, silver with hints of blue under the neon lights, and her eyes glowed like molten gold. There was something not human about her, something that made even the loudest men fall silent. Then they saw it. A long, curved sword hanging at her side, and faint, scaled patterns running across her neck. She was not fully human. She was something else. A dragon-human hybrid. A creature people whispered about but never thought was real. The bartender, a large man with cybernetic arms, frowned. "We don't want trouble here," he said, his voice slow and heavy. The woman didn't answer. She stepped closer to the counter, her gaze sharp and full of quiet rage. The people around her stared in confusion and fear. The air felt thick, and no one dared to speak. Finally, she took a deep breath and said in a calm but trembling voice, "I'm looking for someone who worked here once." Her golden eyes moved from face to face. "He is my father." A soft laugh broke the silence from one of the tables. A man covered in grease and machine parts leaned back in his chair. "Your father? You think any of us know who that is?" he mocked. "You're in a colony full of bastards, lady. Everyone here's got secrets." But the moment he finished speaking, the woman drew her sword. Not fast, but smooth, controlled, deadly. The light of the blade reflected on the walls, casting a cold gleam over every face in the room. The laughter stopped. No one moved. The woman's voice grew deeper. "Someone in this room knows, and I will not leave until I find the truth." The bartender slowly raised his hands. "Listen, girl. You can't come in waving blades and asking old questions. This colony's got ghosts best left alone." She looked at him with eyes full of pain. "I don't care about ghosts," she whispered. "I need answers." The room stayed silent for a long moment. Then, from the far corner, an old mechanic stood up. His hair was white, his body covered in old mechanical implants. He looked at her carefully. "What's your name, girl?" he asked. "People used to call me Lyra," she replied quietly. "Lyra of the Scales." The old man's face turned pale. He looked at the others, then back at her. "You shouldn't be here," he muttered. "If what you are saying is true, if you really are who I think you are, then your father, he was no ordinary man." The crowd began whispering, and Lyra took a step closer. "Tell me where he is," she demanded. The old man hesitated, eyes filled with fear. "He's gone, child. Gone long ago. And if you're smart, you'll stop looking." But Lyra's voice cracked as she replied, "He left my mother to die. I won't stop until I know why." Outside, thunder rolled across the dome. Lightning lit up the sky, even though there should have been no storm in the artificial weather system. People glanced nervously at the ceiling. The colony's power grid was flickering. Strange energy ripples ran through the bar's lights, and Lyra's scales glowed faintly in response. The old mechanic took a step back, his hands shaking. "You're triggering the energy field," he whispered. "You don't even know what's inside you, do you?" Lyra looked down at her hands, confused, as faint blue sparks danced along her fingers. The power around her felt alive, like something ancient waking up inside her veins. The bartender shouted, "Shut down the generators." But the lights only flickered harder. Glasses began to shake, and the air buzzed with heat. Everyone backed away except Lyra. She stood still, breathing heavily, her eyes glowing brighter than before. The energy suddenly calmed, and everything went silent again. Then, from behind the counter, a small holographic image flickered to life on the wall. It was an old photo, a group of human engineers standing beside a large wing-shaped machine. Among them was a young man with the same golden eyes as Lyra. The room froze. Lyra stepped closer, staring at the image. "That's him," she whispered. "That's my father." The bartender looked down, unable to meet her eyes. "He was one of us once," he said quietly. "But he disappeared after the last colony war. No one's seen him since." Lyra clenched her sword, her voice trembling with anger and sadness. "Then I'll find him myself," she said, "even if I have to tear this colony apart." The lights flickered once more, and the air turned cold. Somewhere deep beneath the colony, a low hum echoed, as if something ancient had awakened. Lyra didn't notice. She turned toward the exit, her cloak flowing behind her. The crowd stayed silent, too afraid to move or speak. As the door slid open, the bartender called after her, his voice shaking. "Girl, if you find him, you might not like what you discover." Lyra paused at the door, her face half hidden in the blue light. "I already don't," she replied, and stepped out into the storm. Outside the bar, the storm had grown darker. The winds carried fine red dust that shimmered under the colony lights like ash from a dying fire. Lyra walked slowly through the narrow streets of the lower sector, her cloak whipping around her like black wings. People moved aside as she passed. No one dared to look into her eyes for more than a second. The word had already spread. A dragon girl had appeared, searching for her father, stirring things that were meant to stay buried. The colony guards avoided her path, pretending to check their scanners. Even machines seemed to hum nervously when she walked by. The city above her head was a maze of steel bridges, vents, and neon signs. The colony had once been built for science, for discovery, but now it was only a marketplace for secrets. Lyra stopped under a flickering light and opened a small device she had taken from her mother's belongings. A data crystal, cracked and half-burned. She touched it gently, and a faint hologram blinked alive. It showed a line of numbers, then a single name, Project Wyvern. Her golden eyes narrowed. That same word had been whispered by the bartender before she left the bar. A word that made his hands tremble. She didn't know what it meant, but she knew it was connected to her father. Lyra followed the signal that pulsed weakly from the data crystal. It led her down to the industrial zone, where steam rose from the ground and the smell of burning metal filled the air. Huge machines worked day and night, pressing the planet's minerals into fuel. She moved through the fog, her boots splashing through puddles of dark oil. Somewhere behind her, footsteps echoed, soft, quick, and careful. Lyra stopped and turned sharply, her sword ready. But there was nothing, only shadows dancing in the light. She waited, listening, but the sound was gone. She sheathed her blade and moved on, unaware that a pair of red eyes were watching her from the rooftops. After a while, she reached a broken elevator shaft that led to the old maintenance tunnels, a part of the colony that had been sealed years ago after an explosion. She climbed down carefully, her glowing eyes lighting the way. The tunnels were silent except for the dripping of water and the hum of distant generators. As she walked deeper, she noticed strange marks on the walls, symbols that looked half-human, half-dragon. Her heart beat faster. She had seen these symbols before in her dreams, and her mother used to whisper them when she was a child, calling them the ancient words. Suddenly, a soft metallic sound echoed behind her. A gun being cocked. Lyra froze. "Don't move," a voice said from the dark. "Turn around slowly." She turned her head and saw a man in a black armored suit, holding a plasma rifle aimed at her chest. His helmet reflected her golden eyes. "Who are you?" he demanded. Lyra stayed silent. "Answer me," he shouted again. "You're trespassing in a restricted area." But before he could step closer, Lyra's sword flashed, faster than his eyes could follow. The gun flew from his hands, and sparks burst out as it hit the floor. She pushed him against the wall, blade at his throat. "I don't want to hurt you," she said quietly, "but tell me what Project Wyvern is." The soldier hesitated, fear flickering in his eyes. You shouldn't know about that, he stammered. It was shut down years ago. Everyone who worked on it vanished. Lyra pressed the blade closer. And my father? She asked. Was he part of it? The man swallowed hard. Yes, he was one of the scientists, but he wasn't human either, not fully. Lyra frowned, confused. What do you mean? The soldier looked down. They said he merged his DNA with dragon cells. You're his creation. The words struck her like lightning. For a moment, she couldn't breathe. That's not true, she whispered. My father was human. The man shook his head. No, he became something else. He tried to create a hybrid that could survive any world, any war. But the experiment failed, or so they thought. He looked at her carefully. Until you appeared. Lyra stepped back, her sword shaking in her hands. You're lying, she said, but her voice was weak. The soldier slowly lifted his hands. If you want proof, he said, go to the north sector, under the reactor core. That's where they kept the files. But you'll have to hurry. Someone else is already looking for you. Before Lyra could ask who, the ceiling above them shook violently. Dust rained down, and a red alarm flashed in the tunnel. The soldier pushed her aside as a beam of metal crashed where they had been standing. Go, he shouted. They've found you. Lyra hesitated for only a second before running down the tunnel. Behind her, the sound of gunfire echoed. Not from her, but from whoever had been following her earlier. The red-eyed shadow had returned, firing plasma bolts that lit up the dark. Lyra turned briefly and saw it. A figure wrapped in armor shaped like a dragon, moving like a predator. It wasn't human. She ran faster, her breath sharp, her heart pounding. Sparks flew as plasma hit the walls around her. She jumped over pipes and slid under fallen metal beams. The tunnel grew brighter as she neared the exit ladder. With one final burst, she climbed up and burst through a hatch into the cold night air. She fell to the ground, coughing, her cloak torn and her hands bleeding. The city lights above looked distant and unreal. She could still hear the echo of battle below, then silence. She didn't know if the soldier had survived. Lyra stared at the cracked data crystal in her hand. The word wyvern glowed brighter now, as if reacting to her blood. She knew she couldn't stop here. The truth was closer, but so was danger. She stood up slowly, her eyes burning with determination. Somewhere beneath the colony's reactor, her father's secrets were waiting, and so was the thing hunting her. As the artificial sun began to rise, painting the colony in pale gold light, Lyra whispered to herself, "If he made me, then he'll answer for it." She walked toward the north sector, unaware that high above, in the command tower, someone was watching her through a holographic screen. A man with the same golden eyes as hers, alive and waiting. The next day, the colony sky burned orange as the artificial sun rose over the metallic domes. The streets were quieter than usual, as if the whole city could feel that something dangerous was moving among them. Lyra had spent the night hiding in an abandoned workshop near the industrial sector. Her cloak was torn, her arms bruised, and her sword had small burns along its edge. She didn't sleep. She couldn't. The words of the soldier still echoed in her mind. "You're his creation." She wanted to believe he was lying, but deep down, a small part of her knew he was telling the truth. She sat beside a cracked mirror and looked at her reflection. For the first time, she saw what the others saw, her strange glowing eyes, the faint silver scales that shimmered beneath her skin, the small marks of dragon heritage that she had always tried to hide. She remembered her mother's voice, gentle and kind, saying, "You are not cursed, Lyra. You are special. You are born for a reason." Tears filled her eyes, but she quickly wiped them away. "If he made me," she whispered, "then I'll make him answer for it." She pulled the data crystal from her pocket again. Its faint glow was stronger now, pulsing like a heartbeat. When she placed it against her wrist communicator, it projected a small holographic map, a red dot blinking under the colony's main reactor. That was her next destination. But reaching it wouldn't be easy. The reactor sector was restricted to high-level engineers and military personnel only. Anyone caught trespassing there would be executed or worse, erased from the colony records as if they never existed. Lyra didn't care. She had come too far to turn back. When the night cycle began again, Lyra moved through the shadowed alleys, staying out of view of patrol drones. Her movements were silent, graceful, like a creature of both sky and shadow. She reached the main power grid gate and saw 2 guards standing watch. Their helmets glowed faintly blue, scanning the area. Lyra took a deep breath and closed her eyes. She focused, letting the strange energy inside her body rise slowly. Sparks of blue light danced over her fingers, and when she opened her eyes again, her pupils glowed like burning suns. In one swift motion, she raised her hand, and the lights around the gate flickered and went out. The guards turned, confused, and before they could react, Lyra was behind them. Fast as lightning, silent as smoke. She slipped inside the gate and followed the narrow stairs downward, deeper into the colony's underground heart. The hum of machines grew louder. The air was warm and filled with the sound of spinning turbines. Pipes ran along the walls, glowing faintly from the power flowing through them. The path ended at a massive metal door marked with a faded symbol, a dragon's wing wrapped around a circle. The same symbol she had seen in her dreams. Her heart pounded. She touched the door, and for a moment, it felt alive, as if it recognized her. Suddenly, the door hissed open with a low mechanical sound. A cold blue light poured from inside. Lyra stepped through carefully. What she saw took her breath away. The room was filled with large glass tubes, each one holding a faint shadow of something inside, shapes that looked human, but not quite. Scales shimmered under the lights, wings pressed against glass walls, eyes flickering with faint light. There were dozens of them. Experiments. Failed ones. Her stomach twisted. This was no research lab. It was a graveyard of lives that had never begun. She walked slowly between the glass chambers, reading the labels. Subject 04A DNA unstable. Subject 09C dragon cell rejection. Subject 11F terminated. Each name, each failure carried a silent scream. Then she saw one with the label Subject 01 Alpha Hybrid. Inside the chamber was an empty space. The glass was shattered, and the wires were torn apart. She stepped closer and saw a name scratched faintly on the metal beneath the glass. Dr. Cale Varon. Her father's name. Her hands trembled. "So it's true," she whispered. "I was one of them, and I survived." A soft mechanical hum broke her thoughts. A voice echoed through the room, cold and artificial. Unauthorized access detected. Security protocol engaged. Red lights flashed across the walls. Lyra spun around, her sword drawn, but the door behind her had sealed shut. A deep mechanical sound filled the air, and one of the glass tubes began to crack. The liquid inside bubbled violently. A hand, clawed and glowing faintly, slammed against the glass from the inside. Lyra stepped back, eyes wide. Another hybrid was waking up. The glass exploded outward, and a tall figure stepped into the light. Its body was covered in black scales, its face half human, half dragon, and its eyes burned red. It looked at Lyra with something between hate and sorrow. "Another survivor," it hissed. Lyra raised her sword. "Who are you?" The creature smiled, showing sharp metallic teeth. "I am what you were meant to be," it said slowly. "The perfect weapon. The last of Project Wyvern." They circled each other, both moving with impossible speed. The hybrid struck first, claws flashing like blades. Lyra blocked, sparks flying as steel met scale. The fight shook the room, alarms blaring as energy rippled through the walls. Lyra's sword glowed brighter, reacting to her power, and for a moment, she felt something inside her pulse. A connection, like her blood recognized the creature before her. "You were created by him too," she said. "By my father." The hybrid's eyes narrowed. "He made us all," it said bitterly. "And then he abandoned us, just like he will abandon you." Before Lyra could answer, the creature lunged again, knocking her back into a control panel. Sparks flew, and the lights went out for a second. In the darkness, Lyra could hear the hybrid's slow breathing, steady and confident. "You can't escape what you are," it whispered. "You'll destroy everything you touch." Lyra clenched her jaw, stood up, and raised her sword once more. "Then I'll start with you," she said, her voice calm and cold. The hybrid laughed, a dark, broken sound. "You're just like him." Then it leaped again, and their blades met with a thunderous crack that echoed through the reactor tunnels. As the fight continued, none of them noticed that a holographic figure had appeared on a nearby screen. A man with golden eyes watching quietly. "So," he said softly, "she finally found the core." His lips curled into a faint smile. "It's time she learns the truth." And then, with a simple command, he activated something deep within the reactor, a signal that made every remaining hybrid cell in the room begin to glow. Lyra froze as the air filled with light, and a deep, rumbling voice whispered from everywhere and nowhere, "Welcome home, my daughter." The room trembled as the deep voice echoed through every wall. Lyra froze, her sword still raised, her heart pounding so loudly she could barely breathe. The red lights of the reactor flickered, and a soft golden glow began to rise from the center of the chamber. The hybrid she was fighting stopped too, stepping back slowly, its glowing eyes shifting from anger to confusion. Both of them turned toward the light. A figure was forming there, tall, calm, surrounded by waves of digital energy. It was not real, but the image looked almost alive. The figure's face appeared, and Lyra felt her breath stop. She knew that face. It was the same one from the old hologram in the bar, the man with the golden eyes. "Father," she whispered, her voice breaking. The hologram smiled faintly. "You have grown stronger than I expected," the voice said, deep and calm. "You found your way back to me. That means the code inside you still remembers." Lyra took a step forward, her sword trembling in her hand. "Why?" she asked. "Why did you make me? Why did you leave us?" The hologram flickered, and the man tilted his head. "Because, my child, I was never meant to stay. You were not a mistake. You were the beginning of something greater." The hybrid beside her growled, taking a step closer to the hologram. "Greater?" it spat. "You call this greater? You turned us into monsters." The hologram looked at the creature, his expression unchanging. "You were failures," he said simply. "Experiments that could not hold the dragon code without losing control. Lyra was the only one who survived. The only perfect result." Lyra stared in shock. "You killed them?" she asked quietly. "All of them." The hologram's voice stayed calm. "They were not alive, Lyra. They were tests. You were my creation, my daughter, the bridge between dragon and human. The one who would finish what I started." Lyra felt anger rising inside her like fire. "I'm not your weapon," she said sharply. "I'm not your experiment. I'm a person." The hologram's eyes glowed brighter. "You may think that," he said, "but the power inside you is not human. It is ancient and wild. If you do not control it, it will consume you." His tone softened slightly. "You are connected to the core itself, Lyra. You can feel it, can't you? The heartbeat beneath this colony. It beats with your energy." Lyra looked around the room. The machines around her hummed, almost like they were breathing in rhythm with her pulse. She realized he was right. The deeper she went, the stronger the energy felt, as if the entire colony was tied to her life somehow. But she refused to believe his words. "If you wanted to help, you wouldn't have abandoned me," she said. "You wouldn't have left my mother to die." For a brief moment, the hologram's expression changed. Sadness, guilt, something human flickered across his face, but it vanished quickly. "Her death was necessary," he said coldly. "She tried to destroy my work. She wanted to erase you before you awakened. I couldn't allow that." Lyra's eyes filled with tears. The anger in her chest grew stronger, hotter, until the air around her began to shake. Sparks of blue and gold light danced along her arms, and the ground cracked beneath her feet. "You're lying," she shouted. "She loved me." She tried to protect me from you. The hologram's face remained calm, but the voice became sharper. If you let your emotions control you, the dragon within will rise. You are already losing balance, Lyra. You can feel it, that heat, that rage. That is what destroyed the others. If you continue like this, you'll end the same way. The hybrid standing nearby smiled bitterly. Maybe that's what she deserves, it hissed. Lyra turned toward it, her eyes glowing brighter than ever. Stay out of this, she said coldly. But the hybrid stepped forward. He used us, Lyra. You think you're special? You're just another one of his weapons. You'll kill for him, just like he planned. It raised its claws, ready to strike, but Lyra moved faster. Her sword clashed with its arm, the force shaking the floor. The hologram watched quietly as they fought again, every strike filling the air with energy waves that made the machines flicker. Suddenly, Lyra's sword sliced through the hybrid's armor, and a burst of light exploded from the wound. The creature screamed, falling to its knees, its body fading into ash and digital fragments. Lyra stepped back, breathing hard, her sword glowing like fire. The hologram spoke softly. Do you see now? You are stronger than all of them. You are perfect. Lyra looked at him, her face pale and full of pain. I don't want to be perfect, she said. I just want to know why you did this. The hologram took a step forward, and the golden eyes looked almost human again. Because the world we knew was dying, he said quietly. Humans were weak. Dragons were extinct. I wanted to create a being that could survive anything, a creature that could rebuild worlds. You are that being, Lyra. You are the key. The lights around the room began to glow brighter, and the air buzzed with energy. Soon, he said, your true form will awaken. But first you must come to me. I am in the command tower. You know the way. The hologram flickered once more and vanished into thin air. The room fell silent except for the low hum of the reactor. Lyra dropped to her knees, tears falling onto the cold floor. She felt lost, broken between anger, grief, and confusion. He's alive, she whispered. All this time, he was alive. She looked up at the shattered glass tubes around her. The thought that she was made, not born, tore at her heart. But deep inside, a new feeling was rising. Not fear, but determination. She stood up slowly, tightening her grip on her sword. Her father wanted her to come to him, but she didn't know if it was for love or control. Either way, she would face him. She walked toward the exit, her cloak torn, her steps heavy but firm. The path ahead would lead her to the command tower and to the truth. As she reached the tunnel's end, the colony's alarm sirens began to wail. Through the speakers, a voice echoed across every dome. Alert! Containment breach in Sector 7. Hybrid signature detected. Lyra looked up toward the distant lights of the tower. She knew who had triggered the alarm, her father. He wasn't calling her home. He was preparing for war. The colony sky glowed red that night, painted by the warning lights that flashed across every dome. Sirens screamed through the streets, and mechanical drones moved like swarms of metal insects, scanning every shadow. People hid inside their homes, whispering rumors of a creature that had awakened under the reactor. No one knew her name, but everyone felt her presence. Somewhere in the lower sector, Lyra walked silently through the chaos, her cloak torn, her sword glowing faintly at her side. The alarms weren't just calling for her. They were hunting her. But she didn't run anymore. Not this time. She was heading straight toward the command tower, where her father was waiting. The command tower stood in the center of the colony like a spear piercing the sky. Its walls shimmered with silver glass and black steel, reflecting the false stars above. It was the heart of the colony, where power, control, and secrets were all kept. As Lyra approached, she could feel a strange pull in her chest, the same heartbeat she felt in the reactor. It was like the building itself was alive, calling to her. She stopped at the massive gate. 2 tall security mechs blocked the entrance, their eyes glowing blue. They raised their plasma cannons when they saw her. Lyra took a slow breath, feeling the energy inside her veins start to rise again. The air around her crackled, small sparks dancing along her arms. When the mechs fired, she moved, fast as lightning, spinning through the air. The plasma bolts hit the ground where she had been standing, exploding in bright flashes. Lyra landed between them, her sword glowing with blue fire. With 2 swift strikes, she cut through the mech's armor, sending showers of sparks flying. Both machines fell to the ground, their systems shutting down with a loud hiss. She walked through the smoke and into the tower. Inside, everything was quiet. The walls glowed faintly, and the air felt cold and heavy. She could hear her own footsteps echoing through the long corridor. Her communicator beeped once, showing a new signal, her father's location, high above, in the main control room. The elevator was locked, but Lyra didn't stop. She looked up the shaft, her eyes glowing brighter. Then she leaped, grabbing the steel cables and pulling herself upward. Her claws, half formed from her scales, dug into the metal easily. With each climb, the energy inside her grew stronger. Halfway up, the tower lights flickered again. A voice came through the speakers, calm and familiar. "You don't have to fight me, Lyra," her father's voice said. "Just come to me, and I'll show you what you really are." She paused for a moment, holding onto the cable. "You already showed me," she muttered. "You showed me what kind of monster you are." The voice replied softly, "No, my child. I showed you what kind of god you could become." Anger burned in her chest. She climbed faster, reaching the top level and forcing the elevator doors open. The control floor was massive, filled with holographic screens, power conduits, and glowing data crystals. At the center stood a large circular platform, surrounded by moving light patterns. Lyra stepped forward carefully. Then she heard the sound of footsteps, several of them. From the shadows, armored soldiers appeared, each carrying heavy plasma rifles. Their helmets bore the same dragon wing symbol she had seen before. Her father's soldiers. The leader raised his hand. "Surrender, hybrid," he ordered. "Dr. Varen wants you alive." Lyra stared at them silently. "He wants me alive?" she asked quietly. "Then he should have told you to stay out of my way." The soldiers opened fire. Plasma bolts filled the air, lighting up the room in flashes of blue and red. Lyra moved like a storm, jumping, rolling, striking with her sword. Every time her blade touched a weapon, it melted through the metal like it was wax. She could feel the dragon energy inside her bursting out, filling her muscles with power. In one final motion, she slammed her sword into the floor, sending a shockwave of blue fire across the room. The soldiers were thrown back, their weapons shattered. The lights flickered, and the smell of burned metal filled the air. Lyra stood in the center, breathing hard, her eyes glowing brighter than ever. The ground beneath her feet was scorched. For a moment, everything was silent again. Then, from the center of the platform, a golden holographic light rose slowly, and her father's face appeared once more. He looked calm, almost proud. "Impressive," he said softly. "You are becoming everything I hoped." Lyra's voice was cold. "I'm not what you hoped. I'm what you made, and I'll never forgive you for it." The hologram smiled faintly. "Forgiveness is not needed, only understanding. You think I made you to control you, but that's not true. I made you to replace me." Lyra frowned. "Replace you?" The hologram nodded. "My body is dying. The radiation from the First War destroyed my cells years ago. But your body, your dragon code, can survive forever. You are my legacy." Lyra shook her head in disbelief. "You want to live through me? That's why you created me." The hologram's golden eyes gleamed. "Not just live through you, become you. When you reach the core of this tower, the system will merge our minds. You will become something new, a fusion of human will and dragon power. Together, we will rule the stars." Lyra took a step back, her hands shaking. "You're insane." "No," her father said. "I'm a scientist, and you are the final experiment." The hologram faded, and a door opened behind the platform. Inside was a large glass chamber filled with golden light, the transfer core. The walls hummed softly, and the air pulsed with energy that made Lyra's heart race. She felt drawn to it, like gravity itself was pulling her forward. But before she could move, alarms began blaring again. The ground shook violently. From the upper balcony, mechanical arms unfolded, and new defense drones came online, each armed with glowing plasma blades. The voice of her father echoed again, sharper this time. "Don't fight it, Lyra. Step into the core. It's your destiny." Lyra gritted her teeth, raising her sword once more. "No," she said softly. "My destiny is my own." The drones descended, spinning like vultures, their lights flashing red. Lyra's eyes glowed with blinding gold as she charged forward. The room erupted in chaos, light, fire, and thunder. As she fought through the machines, each strike stronger than the last. She could feel her dragon power awakening fully now, wings of light beginning to form faintly behind her. But she also felt her body shaking, the energy too much to control. As she destroyed the last drone, the room fell silent again, smoke curling around her. She stood in front of the glowing chamber, her sword still burning with energy. Inside the chamber, she saw her father. Not a hologram this time, but his real body suspended in a field of golden light, alive but fragile. His eyes opened slowly, glowing with the same color as hers. "Welcome, Lyra," he said weakly. "It's time for us to become one." Lyra stared at him, torn between rage and sorrow. Her sword trembled in her hand. "You took everything from me," she said. "You made me a monster." Her father smiled faintly. "No, my daughter. I made you a god." The ground shook again, louder this time, and the core began to open. Lyra stepped back, her mind spinning. If she didn't stop him now, he would merge with her, and there would be no turning back. The light swallowed the room as the transfer process began. Lyra raised her sword high, energy flowing through her veins like fire. "Then you'll meet the god you created," she whispered, and charged straight into the light. The light swallowed Lyra whole. For a moment, she felt nothing. No ground, no air, no pain, just endless white. Then slowly, color began to return, but it wasn't real color. The space around her shimmered like liquid glass, bending and twisting with every breath she took. She was inside the transfer core, but it didn't look like a machine anymore. It looked like a world made of thoughts and memories, her father's mind. Strange symbols floated in the air, and broken images appeared around her. The colony, the laboratory, the dragon fossils, and a young version of herself inside a glass tube. Everything pulsed like a heartbeat, and she could feel it echoing through her own chest. She took a step forward, and her foot rippled through the ground like she was walking on water. The air buzzed softly, and a voice whispered all around her, calm and familiar. "You've finally come home, Lyra." She turned sharply, her sword glowing in her hand, though it felt weightless here. Out of the white mist, her father appeared, but not as the fragile old man she saw in the chamber. Here he looked powerful, tall, and young again. His eyes glowed gold, his body surrounded by waves of light. "This is who I truly am," he said. "Not the weak human shell you saw outside. This is my mind, my creation, my empire of thought. And soon it will be yours too." Lyra raised her sword. "I don't want your empire," she said. "I want the truth." The man smiled softly. "The truth." He waved his hand, and the space around them changed again. Suddenly, they were in the laboratory where Lyra had been created. The machines hummed, the tanks glowed, and small embryos floated inside them. "You were the first," he said. "The first to survive. Before you, there were failures, dozens of them. I mixed human DNA with dragon cells, but the others couldn't handle the energy. Only you did." Lyra's throat tightened. "And my mother?" The man looked at her, and for the first time, there was silence. Then he said quietly, "She was the key. The dragon's energy needed a bond. Something pure, something emotional. She gave you life, and it destroyed her." Lyra's eyes widened. "You mean you used her?" You killed her. He looked down, his expression unreadable. She knew what it meant. She believed in the vision. She believed that through you, the human race would evolve. Lyra's voice broke. She believed in you, not in this madness. The world trembled slightly as her emotions flared. Sparks of blue energy rippled from her skin, making the false lab flicker and distort. You lied to me my whole life, she said, her voice shaking. You made me think I was broken, dangerous, just to control me. Her father's image didn't move. You were dangerous, he replied calmly. Even now you feel it, don't you? The power inside you. It's beyond anything a human can contain. Without me, you'll burn yourself out. Lyra took a deep breath, her eyes glowing brighter. Then I'll burn, she said coldly. But I won't be your experiment anymore. She swung her sword through the air, and a shockwave of blue energy tore across the white space. The illusion of the lab shattered, replaced by an endless storm of light and fire. Her father's form broke apart and reappeared above her, now transformed. His body wrapped in golden armor, his eyes burning like stars. You can't destroy me here, he said. This is my mind, my creation. Every thought here obeys me. Lyra floated upward, her dragon wings of light forming behind her once again. Then I'll change your mind, she said. With a cry, she flew forward, clashing with him midair. Their swords collided, sending ripples through the world. Every strike shattered pieces of memory. Flashes of the colony, the war, her mother's face. The space filled with thunder and glowing fire as father and daughter battled across their shared consciousness. Each time Lyra struck, her father absorbed the energy and grew stronger, feeding on her rage. See, he shouted. Your power comes from me. You can't fight what you are. But Lyra remembered something her mother once whispered in a dream. You are both light and fire, but your heart decides which one you become. Those words echoed now. Her breathing slowed. She realized the more she fought with anger, the stronger her father became. She needed to fight with something else, not rage but purpose. She closed her eyes and let the sword lower slightly. Her father stopped mid-strike, confused. What are you doing? He demanded. Lyra opened her eyes again, and they were no longer just glowing blue. They shimmered with silver light, calm and steady. You're right, she said softly. I am what you made. But that doesn't mean I belong to you. The world around her started to shift again, the light bending toward her instead of him. The golden storm slowed down, and for the first time her father's image flickered. He looked shocked. Impossible, he whispered. You're rewriting the core? Lyra nodded slowly. You built me with your code. But you forgot one thing, the human part of me. The part you could never control. She raised her sword again. But this time it wasn't fire or rage that powered it. It was her mother's voice, her own will, her heart. The blade glowed pure white, brighter than anything in the sky. This ends now, she said, and struck straight through her father's form. There was a blinding flash. The entire space exploded into fragments of light. The voice of her father screamed, echoing like thunder, then faded into silence. The storm stopped. The white world slowly began to dissolve, turning into dust. Lyra floated in the air, surrounded by drifting pieces of memory. Her mother smiling, her own younger self playing in a garden, the colony under a peaceful blue sky. She felt tears slip down her face as she whispered, "Goodbye." The light began to fade, and the real world returned. She opened her eyes, gasping for breath. The transfer core was destroyed, cracks spreading across the chamber, golden light leaking out into the dark air. Her father's body was gone, his chair empty. The machines around her powered down one by one, their lights fading. Lyra fell to her knees, exhausted but alive. The dragon energy inside her was still burning, but quieter now. No longer wild, no longer chained. She looked around the ruined chamber. For the first time there was silence. No sirens, no machines, no voices in her head. Only peace. But she knew it wasn't over yet. The colony was still in danger, The reactor that powered it was linked to the same system her father had created. If it failed, everything would be destroyed. She stood up slowly, gripping her sword. "It's not over," she whispered. "I have one last thing to do." As she walked toward the exit, a small blue hologram appeared beside her, a faint echo of her mother's face. It smiled softly and said, "You did it, Lyra. You're free now." Lyra smiled through her tears. "Not yet," she said. "Not until everyone is safe." The hologram nodded once before fading away. Outside the tower, the sky was turning red again. The reactor was unstable. The colony trembled as explosions lit up the horizon. Lyra looked up at the burning sky and took a deep breath. The final battle wasn't against her father anymore. It was against the destruction he left behind. She spread her glowing wings, the air swirling around her. "Time to finish what he started," she whispered. And then she flew toward the reactor, leaving a trail of light behind her. The sky above the colony was burning. Red flames tore through the clouds as the central reactor tower pulsed with unstable energy. Electric storms rolled across the horizon, tearing through the metallic city below. Every alarm in the colony screamed at once, warning of total collapse. People were running through the streets, calling for help, their faces pale with fear. And high above them all, in the smoky air, a glowing figure soared through the chaos. Lyra, the dragon-human hybrid, flying toward the heart of the storm. Her wings of light spread wide, leaving trails of silver fire behind her. The wind roared in her ears, but her mind was calm now. The battle inside the core had changed her. She was no longer half-human or half-dragon. She was whole. The energy that once tore her apart was now in perfect balance. Her father's voice was gone, his control broken. But his legacy, the reactor he built, was dying, and if it exploded, the entire colony would vanish. She couldn't let that happen. Not to the people who once feared her. Not to the world her mother had believed in. Lyra landed on the edge of the reactor platform. The structure shook violently, glowing cracks running through its surface. Sparks and smoke filled the air. The control systems were fried, their screens flickering with red warning symbols. She stepped forward carefully, shielding her face from the heat. The ground beneath her trembled like a living thing, and a massive wave of energy surged upward from the core. It was like standing on the edge of a volcano about to erupt. She closed her eyes and reached out her hand, feeling the pulse of the reactor through the metal. The energy inside was wild. Angry, confused, desperate to break free. "It's alive," she whispered. Her father had tied his consciousness to the machine before he died. Even after his defeat, a fragment of him still lingered, trapped inside the reactor's systems. It wasn't speaking, but she could feel it. A presence, cold and familiar, like a ghost. Lyra gritted her teeth. "You couldn't control me in life, and you won't destroy them in death," she said firmly. She stepped closer to the glowing core, her sword shining like a beacon. The air around her shimmered with blue and gold light. She could feel the dragon energy inside her connecting with the reactor's flow. It was dangerous. One wrong move, and the explosion would wipe out everything within miles. But she had no choice. She raised her sword high, and with a deep breath, plunged it straight into the heart of the reactor. The impact sent a shockwave through the entire structure. The reactor roared like a living beast, the lights turning blinding white. Lyra screamed, not in pain, but in effort, pouring every bit of her energy into stabilizing the flow. Her wings stretched wide, glowing brighter and brighter until they filled the sky. The ground beneath her feet cracked, molten energy rising through the metal, but she stood her ground. She focused not on anger or fear, but on the memory of her mother's smile, the sound of laughter in the colony streets, and the hope that humans and dragons could both live free. The reactor began to calm. The violent tremors softened. The red light turned blue. Slowly, the storm in the sky faded, replaced by a soft golden glow. Lyra could feel the system responding to her, syncing with her heartbeat, harmonizing with her energy. The power that once threatened to destroy the colony was now becoming part of her. Her eyes glowed brighter than ever, her hair floating in the energy stream like fire in water. The voice of her father's echo whispered faintly one last time, "You can't contain that power forever." Lyra smiled softly. "I don't need to," she whispered back. "I just need to give it away." She raised her sword one final time and sent a wave of pure energy through the entire network. A pulse of light that spread across every circuit, every machine, every dome of the colony. The light washed over everything like dawn breaking after 1,000 years of night. Then, in an instant, it was gone. The reactor shut down quietly. The alarms stopped, and silence filled the world. For a long moment, there was nothing but the wind. Then the people began to emerge from their shelters, looking up at the sky. It was clear again, calm, blue, and beautiful. The red glow was gone. The tower still stood, cracked but stable. And at the very top, surrounded by gentle sparks of light, stood Lyra. Her wings faded slowly, turning into faint trails of dust. Her sword was gone, melted into the metal floor. She smiled softly, her eyes tired but peaceful. She looked down at the colony, at the same people who once feared her, now staring up in awe. "You're safe now," she whispered. "All of you." A tear rolled down her cheek, but this time it wasn't from pain. It was from relief. The voice of her mother echoed faintly in her heart. "You were never a monster, Lyra. You were the bridge between worlds." Lyra took one last look at the reactor, then spread her arms as the wind lifted her gently into the air. She rose into the sky, higher and higher, until she disappeared into the clouds, leaving behind only a streak of light, like a dragon flying toward the stars. Down below, the colony slowly came back to life. Children pointed at the sky, calling her name. Mechanics, soldiers, and workers all stood together, realizing that the one they called hybrid had saved them all. On the giant screen in the central plaza, the system displayed one final message. Reactor stabilized. System reboot complete. Project Lyra. Success. And so, the legend of the Dragon Girl began, not as a weapon or a monster, but as a savior. Her story spread through the colony and beyond, carried by those who had seen her light. They built a small statue of her in the colony square, wings spread wide, sword held high, a reminder that even something born of two worlds could protect both. Lyra's story reminds us, no matter how dark our origin, we can always choose our light. If you enjoyed this story, make sure to subscribe to our channel for more sci-fi adventures. Like, share, and comment what you think happened to Lyra after she vanished into the stars. Maybe she's still out there watching over the colony. Until next time, stay curious, stay human.